People who went to the hospital for having something stuck up your butt. What is your story? Ah. My time to shine. I was on a fairly long contract in a country where most toys are illegal banned. That led my partner and I to get creative. We enjoy all sorts of kinky activity. Pegging among them. One of our toys was fashioned from a large, softish silicone dog toy that had ribbing little smooth knobs on it. It was actually a lot of fun to use, until one evening of quite inebriated play and some rather vigorous activity from the missus led to the harness coming loose, though there was a base on the toy. It was soft, and the whole thing was pulled up into my butt. No problem. Just push it out. Right. Nope, the damn thing ascended and because it was soft. Managed to take a hard left at lodge itself in the transverse part of plumbing. Panic starts to set in. We tried everything we could think of or look up for how to remove it, enema, pressure on outside of stomach. We even tried modifying some tongs with soft rubber grabbers to try to pull the damn thing out. After about a day of trying different approaches and realizing this thing was settling in for the long haul, I had to ring a proctologist at a local hospital and ask some uncomfortable questions about if there would be any official trouble if I came into the hospital with something needing to be removed. He assured me there was no problem. Got there the afternoon of day 2. He did an ultrasound, then the mofo called in 2 other consulting doctors to have a look. I was mortified. But honest with them. Oddly enough, being drunk was the only part of the story I didn't share. Quick prep for outpatient surgery, they put me under general anesthesia, and apparently it was quite easy to remove once my body was completely relaxed. I woke up a few hours later in recovery. And the nurses were all giving me odd looks, but the doctor said everything was great and I should be fine. He did encourage me to be more careful in the future. That's when I noticed something on the foot of the bed next to my leg. They'd bagged the toy in a bright yellow biohazard bag and asked if I wanted it back. That was mortifying. I declined the souvenir when I was cleared to leave. I rang my wife from the lobby, who came to collect me in the car. She would not come inside the hospital, but I don't blame her. Insurance wouldn't cover it, ended up costing about $3.500. Most expensive sex mistake ever, if you don't count accidental pregnancy. I worked in the for 10 years and I have a lot of these. But my favorite was a rolled up newspaper with staples in it wrapped in duct tape. The staples ended up shredding his colon and he needed emergency surgery. But when the doc asked him what happened, he just sheepishly said he really likes the news. I'm a surgeon's assistant. And I've seen a lot of things stuck up people's butts. Typically it's just dildos, honestly. I've seen carrots, cucumber, eggplant, sweet potato, glass beer bottles. All of these things are generally easy-ish to get out unless they're fucking huge. Maybe not the eggplant. Those are always big. Then there's the weird shit. Light bulb. I've seen 3. 2 broke before they got to us. 1 came out easy. The broken ones required bowel resection because of how badly it damaged the bowel. The Buzz Lightyear action figure. The smaller one. The helmet shield was up. Made for easier entry, I guess. I think someone saw the meme pic. This was much smaller than that. Drugs, but like, way too big of a bag to poop back out. That's usually bad because they wait quite a while before being desperate enough to come in. Someone put a knife inside of a sheath up his butt. I never knew why. Someone else put a pizza slice up his butt. Rolled up. It was mashed up. I imagine it wasn't easy to get in as the crust side, which was facing outward, is dry. Also. With a few drug mule and sex toy exceptions. These are all men. Edit. Wow, thanks everyone. I never thought this post would get so much attention. Thanks. I hope this made at least a few of you folks' days better. Got a feeling op has to go to the and needs a good cover story. I used to work for a doctor's office for multiple general surgeons who were on call for our local hospital. Every month I scanned at least 3 to 4 hospital notes into the system about people having things stuck in their anus colon. My favorite story was from the guy that claims he was cleaning his house while naked and accidentally sat on the handle of the Swiffer he was using. Other noteworthy items: a hard-boiled egg, an entire beer bottle, a bottle of vitamins, multiple instances of Sharpie's markers, a flathead screwdriver. This one became a serious issue as it traveled really far and perforated the patient's colon. A very large deli pickle. If you're into anal play, that's nothing to be embarrassed about, but for the love of God, please use toys that are specifically designed for the purpose and won't get lost. Avoid using anything without a flared base, including dildos designed for vaginal penetration that don't have something on the end to block you from clenching that sucker right past the sphincter of no return. When I was a general surgery resident, I've taken out a lot of things stuck in people's rectums. Cucumber, corn on the cob, dildos of course, and Barbie dolls. Only one person just honestly said that he was doing it for pleasure. Everyone else said that they slipped and fell. Trust me. Nobody believes that you were the one in a million that happened to run through a cornfield and then fall on a corn that then got stuck in your butt. Nobody. I used to work for a GI practice. A couple months after I started working there, we were celebrating the birthday of one of the doctors who worked there. Someone had brought a cake with a weird design on it. It looked like a gumball machine. I asked if that was what it was. And my co-workers laughed and said no, it's a lava lamp. I said, oh, does he collect lava lamps? They all burst into laughter. And finally one coworker explained that very recently when the doctor was on call at the hospital, he got a call about somebody who had a lava lamp stuck up his butt. They also gave him a lava lamp for his birthday. An X-ray tech that I knew told me that someone came in with a lot of blood coming out of his behind. He said that he was sledding down a hill and noticed there was a wheelbarrow at the bottom of the hill with the handles facing the uphill. Instead of rolling off the sled, he hiked his legs up over his head and went asshole first onto the wheelbarrow handle. Poor guy made up a when wheelbarrows attack story instead of just admitting whatever he really did. And somehow he was sledding without pants on. Edit. Same guy also said someone shoved an entire softball into themself, but I don't know how that occurred. Isn't there a coffee table book of ass X-rays? Reminds me of Scrubs where they interviewed a few characters who shoved stuff up their butt. The excuses were typically I fell on it until this one dude nonchalantly said I was bored while shrugging. Once I was bleeding from my ass and, naturally, went to go find a proctologist. I'd seen that episode of Seinfeld and figured that's what you did. I had just started living on my own and didn't really know what to do in a medical emergency. I still thought the ER was something you only went to if you were literally dying. Turns out proctology isn't really practiced anymore as a profession, or wasn't in Boston at the time. Anyway, the poor girl on the helpline for the hospital I was at didn't even know what proctology was. When she asked me to clarify for the third time, I said something like, butts. It's all about butts. There was a pause. And she said, okay. I'm just gonna transfer you to the gastrointestinal ward. Which, of course, wasn't what I needed at all. Finally, some random doctor in a different hospital had to kindly explain to me that the ER really was what I needed. I learned a lot about hospitals that day. When I finally made it to the ER, it also turned out that anyone 21 and younger was sent to the pediatric ward. So I had my ass looked at by a pediatric nurse barely older than I was. In a room wallpapered by smiling monkeys and cute cartoon elephants, surrounded by stuffed animals. I was 21 at the time. That was odd. What was wrong with me? You ask. I was just pooping earlier in the day. And my hemorrhoid up and exploded on me. Nothing stuck up there. But it may as well have been for the pain I was in. Sitting in the first aid station at a busy ski resort with a broken elbow, you hear many things. Largely uninteresting. But some good weird stuff too. As I sat there, feeling generally pretty sorry for myself, a man was brought in, face down on a stretcher, whimpering. Apparently he had fallen and ski patrol went after him. Well, ski patrol wasn't on form and they lost control. Crashing into him, and one of their skies went straight up his arse. Shredded pants and a brutalized butthole. This was quickly overshadowed as a guy was brought in shortly afterwards who'd gotten his throat slashed by the edge of a ski. Nothing arterial. But it was a pretty gnarly sight, realizing the red scarf his buddy had pressed to his neck wasn't red. This probably doesn't meet your expectation for a stuck-up-your-butt story. But when I was 10, me and a friend were playing seesaw on a large piece of unfinished lumber. We decided it would be fun to jump onto one side from a low-hanging tree limb, which would subsequently launch the other person into outer space. When it was my turn to be launched, I slipped, and instead of flying off, I got whopped in the nuts and 6 inches of a splinter up my ass. Worst emergency room visit ever. Back in med school I remember a 60-something-year-old man that showed up with a large cucumber in his rectum. It was so deep he needed to go to the OR to remove it. He claimed that one of his friends put it there for medicinal reasons. And it seemed it was not the first time he had done it. Update. Wow, I was not expecting so many upvotes and questions. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Many have asked why they didn't just wait for him to poop it out and why he needed to go to the OR. This happened a couple of years ago, so I don't remember all the details of this case, but there are a few reasons why waiting might be a bad idea. An object that large might be difficult to poop out, especially if the insertion was traumatic, as that causes inflammation, meaning the object is being held tightly. There could also be lacerations to the rectum which would make pooping it out very painful. More serious complications of leaving the object for longer periods of time include perforation, infection, bowel obstruction. When the patient is taken to the OR, that doesn't necessarily mean they are going to cut him open. Quite often he is put under anesthesia so the doctors can add him to extract the object via the rectum without causing too much pain. If the object is really deep, or if there are other complications that require surgery, then you are already in the OR. Rotating through the ad is a resident. Patient presents with complaints of a bleed from his rectum. States it was only a single instance, but was notably not up to date with his colonoscopies. His vitals were fine. His abdominal exam was admittedly brief but didn't turn up much. His blood counts and abdominal x-ray was normal too. We figured he'd be a routine discharge to primary care, follow up for a screening colonoscopy. Now, as I return to his room and discuss the plan with the patient, he then goes, "Hey doctor. There's something I hadn't told you before. Earlier today, I had taken the handle of a broomstick and put it up my butt. Quick lesson. So wood is radiolucent and will not show up on an x-ray. I do a more thorough exam. And on deeper palpation of his stomach, there's something round that feels quite firm. CT scan of his abdomen showed a 13 cm segment of his colon making a perfect cylinder. So yeah. We referred him to surgery because no amount of elbow deep reaching, tweaking, or torquing was overcoming the negative pressure void that was his sigmoid colon. Tip for new trainees and medical students: sometimes the best question you can ask a patient is there anything I haven't asked about that you think I should know about? EDIT1, I forget what words MEANEDIT2. My top Reddit comment is officially a stick up the butt story. I've heard a lot of these stories working for years and the worst is about a guy that managed to put inside his ass a pretty big frozen fish, head first. So that a few hours later the fish defrosted and all the spines started to get stuck in the guy's rectum and it was impossible to remove it. So he had to get operated on. Yikes. Another one is about a guy who was playing with a little ceramic virgin statue and somehow it got too deep and came asking for help to remove it. But he never admitted that. His story was that he tripped and fell with the ass on floor and it got inside accidentally. Update: the guy didn't have to pay anything because this happened in Spain and we have 100% free healthcare. He showed up in our only after the fish defrosted. It seems he was happy at home with his butt fish. And the pain and trouble appeared when he realized wasn't able to pull it out. My story isn't so much about something stuck up my butt so much as it is about a stuck butt. I was born with a condition called imperforate anus. Basically it means my butthole never developed. So technically I was born without a butthole. I like to joke and say that I was born not giving a shit. The way doctors fixed this for me was they ripped me a new one. Lol. They performed a colostomy on the left side of my waist so I can expel waste. I know what you're thinking. That's not where a butthole goes. I agree. Seems like a cruel prank but I digress. After about a year, they reroute the opening they made with the colostomy to where it should have naturally formed. TLDR, I have a man-made asshole. MMA for short. I was hooking up with this dude one night and he says he has a brand new vibrating butt plug and wants to know if I want to try it. It's small so I say yes. Because I was trying to see if I like things being stuck my ass. I ended up kind of liking it and after we were done I proceed to pull it out. I can't find it. I start to panic and hope to God it fell out. I feel for around me and underneath me. Nope. It's fucking stuck in my ass vibrating away. I try to pull it out but I just push it in deeper with my fingers. I'm fucking freaking out and ask him to drive me to the hospital. I sit in the chair and wait for my turn while it's still fucking vibrating in me. The doctor finally pulls it out. It was one of the most embarrassing and humiliating times of my life. I learned that bigger is better when it comes to butt plugs. Edit. So I saw a lot of people asking how the Dr. got it out. I had to pretty much lie on my side as he stuck his fingers in my vagina and he pushed it out that way. It was very uncomfortable lol. And yes. I still like things in my ass, but I learned my lesson. Not my story but my dad's. Who was a surgeon for 30+ years. I comes in with something up his ass. Turns out it's a zucchini. Well. At least it was a zucchini. This dude left that veg up there long enough for it to rot. And his insides got all rotten too. So Mr. Zook, we'll call him, starts desperately pleading. You can't tell my wife about this. And of course HIPAA exists so my dad's like, yeah, no worries. If you don't want her to know. She won't. They get him prepped for surgery. And the guy's wife comes in looking for the doctor wanting to know what's going on. My dad greets her and says, "Ma'am, your husband is going to be fine, but I'm not at liberty to disclose any further details about his condition or his treatment." She's pissed and is like, "That's my husband. You can tell me," and he just repeats, "I cannot discuss his condition or his treatment with you further." So she goes to see Mr. Zook, left about 5 minutes later and never returned. To the best of my recollection, Mr. Zook ended up with a permanent colostomy bag because there was so much damage. Granted, he told me this story about 20 years ago. Disclaimer to state the obvious. Quotes are my recollection of what was said. Not exact quotes. Edit. Some in the comments are wondering how Mr. Zook just let it rot and how did he not die. etc. I don't know the extent to which the zucchini rotted, just that it was to some degree rotted. Enough for the bacteria to damage his lower intestines. My dad passed a few years ago, so I can't get exact clarification, but I don't believe it was a fully rotten, mushy goo he could have just pooped out. Also, to the kind person who gave my comment a wholesome award, thank you, but also you may need to check wholesome in the dictionary. I didn't go because I had something stuck up there, but I ended up with a finger up there. They thought I had appendicitis and for some reason had to put a painkiller tablet up my bum. I was 14 and they rolled me on my side and my mom was sat right there watching me get fingered. It took them a few goes, and at one point the doctor, I hope it was a doctor, no one checked, said I can't get it up there because you keep tensing, and I said I keep tensing because I don't want you getting your finger up there. Eventually they put it in, and I could feel it dissolving and fizzing away. I asked how long it would take for the pain relief to kick in, and he said about the same time as a normal painkiller, so I asked why, didn't you just give me a normal painkiller then? And he just shrugged and walked off. I think he was a doctor. But we really should have checked. My grandmother once worked in medical records and she told me about a file she read through mentioned a guy who came to the hospital with a tennis ball stuck up his ass. The guy's comment on how it got there was he fell on it. Okay. A couple anecdotes. When I was in medical school on my general surgery rotation, a guy came into the ER with a broomstick up his butt and free air in the abdomen. His story was that he was putting stuff away in his closet on a ladder and fell. The broom was leaning against a shelf and he fell on it. Ass first. He showed up in the trauma room with a broom up his ass. Through a big bloody hole in his jeans and had contusions on his diaphragm where the fucking thing stuck. He was embarrassed for days post-op wondering what the fuck people thought of him. That's a legit stick up the ass and everyone felt bad for the guy. But kinda laughed in a sick sort of way anyway. I think he did too. Another guy I took care of in a rehab facility. He got sent to the ER on the middle of the night for a foreign body. He had a big can of hairspray up his ass. Beyond his reach. And said that he was putting it up there because he was constipated and thought it would help. He got admitted to get the thing out and didn't want to come back to the rehab facility. Come on Barbie, let's go party. One time I got a bunch of heroin stuck up my ass. This was back before I got sober. I was pretty nervous because of health reasons and because it wasn't my heroin. I eventually got the heroin out of my ass and 2 days later I was in rehab. Been sober ever since, 5 years. Heroin will make you do weird things. Like shove heroin up your asshole. My favorite rectal foreign body story was trying to figure out how to order an x-ray. Sweet, totally normal female had been playing with a rather nice set of 5 graduated size dildos with a partner. She described that there had been vaginal and rectal play. At the end of the session, 2 toys were missing. She had no symptoms, no pain, but they couldn't find the toys and she became frightened she had lost them inside in the throes of the fun. Nothing on digital exam of the rectum. Plain x-ray of the abdomen normal. But she's still anxious. Fortunately she brought the remaining toys in. By their heft I felt they had a metallic core covered by medical grade silicone and therefore should show up. Metal is very bright on x-ray. And I was reassured. She was not. I suggested we x-ray the remaining toys to affirm that they would have shown up. Dilemma. In this modern computer world I literally cannot get an x-ray without a computer order tied to a diagnosis code. Foreign body. Pain. Obstruction. There's no diagnosis code to order for does this X toy have a metallic core. So I sauntered over to the X-ray suite to have a little conversation with the techs about how to order an X-ray of a toy. In the end they added one more view onto her abdominal series. The toys shone like stars. The patient was satisfied and discharged to see where her little dog must have run off with the missing toys. Lesson. If someone misses part of a sex toy set and brings the other, on the initial X-ray lay the remaining toy next to the patient to show that it's radio pack.